Okay, so thanks so much for being here today. I decided today that we would just spend some time actually sketching. So we're gonna sketch a place in Rome that I love, and if you've ever come on a sketching tour, we've been to, which is called the Portico D'Ottavia in the ancient Roman Jewish ghetto, and it's a beautiful little piece of architecture, and it's just a nice thing to sketch because it has lots of interesting shapes. So I thought we've been spending a lot of time on individual sort of specific skills. So why don't we just spend a day actually making sketches of, a little scene, so we can put some of these skills together and practice them. So what we'll do is we'll break it up into two sort of separate exercises. The first one will be, so I'm just going to share an image with you, and we're all going to draw it together. And what we'll do is first we'll make some small, quick, either thumbnail, I like to call them thumbnail sketches because they're just small and they're like ideas. So we'll make a few of those in order to pick the sort of idea we think works best, and then we'll work from that idea and develop it into a sketch that we spend a little bit more time on. Now, these are short exercises, right, because we don't have a lot of time together. So as always, these are sort of like little tastes that you can then take and work on your own, over time and spend more time on them. So I'm going to share my screen. Figure out how to do this. Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and as I do, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. I hope everybody can see. Oh, there's nothing here. Not really sure why. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a second, and I'm going to figure this out, and as I do, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do exactly. We're going to work from a scene, and as we do, I want you to just make 3 small sketches. And in these 3 small sketches, they're all going to be different ideas. So you're going to explore what's the most interesting idea. You could make a sketch of the whole scene, or you could zoom in on a certain area that you think could be interesting, or something in between. You can think about cutting off the edge of something and just focusing on one area, or look and see where is there a good play of light and shadow. Okay, so think about a few of these different things, and okay, I think it's going to work. And we'll do this exercise together. So I'm going to share this picture with you. Okay, I hope you can all see it. Now, I'm going to try. Can everyone see the photograph? I hope so. If you cannot see, can you just unmute yourself and tell me? Okay. There we go. Let me see if I can make this larger. So here's a picture that I chose because it's a beautiful spot and it has a really interesting sort of play of light and shadow. So we're going to take 10 minutes this time, and I want you to think about some different ideas of a sketch that we'll spend a little bit longer working on. So what I'm going to do is maybe every 3 minutes, I'm going to tell you, okay, it's 3 minutes, time to switch. So we're going to make sketches, 3 small sketches as ideas, like exploring an idea for then making a more developed sketch. So you can use lines, you can use the side of your pencil, but what you should do first is draw a frame or an outline. Like you see how this is framed in a way, right? Like pictures are framed. So on your paper, draw first a frame. Now it could be vertical or horizontal or square. And think about what's going to be inside of your sketch. Now I could just use part of this, right? I don't have to draw the whole scene. I could focus on one, zoom in and focus on one area, or zoom out and try to do the whole thing. So are there any questions? Okay, if anyone has any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask. Okay, so I'm gonna set a timer, and every 3 minutes, I'm gonna tell you 3 minutes, which means switch and try a new idea. So we're just our ideas first, and then we'll do a more finished sketch. Okay, and if anyone can't see, please just speak out. Okay, we're going to start now. Okay, and stop. I'm just gonna see, before we do 2 more small sketches, I just wanna see if anyone has any questions, or you feel lost or confused or rushed with everything. Okay. I'll show you, can you see my screen? Like, I just did this small sketch, and I thought about the different shapes and some light and shadow. Now, I just did some.
Cannot see your drawing.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, can you tell I'm technologically challenged? So here's what I did as my first experiment of an idea, right? I thought about the different shapes, like the arch that has shadows, these shadows coming across, and then the other buildings behind. And I cropped my drawing. So that's one idea I thought I would experiment with. Now, I'd say on this next one, why don't we experiment with, if your first one didn't do this, let's try our second one of just zooming in. So pick an angle of a building, an arch, now it could be, a corner of something. I would say zoom in and see how that looks different than zoomed out. Okay, and so if you zoomed in this last time, try zooming out. And it's just a quick idea that we're getting down. Okay, so I'm going to share again. Okay. So let's try this one more time. I will make this bigger. Okay, and let's experiment with a different idea. Okay, for 3 minutes. And go. Okay, just about 30 more seconds. Okay, and stop. So I'll show you. I did a little zoom in of looking through that arch that has all the shadows. Sorry, and just kind of look into what would that abstract shape look like? So in this case, it's sort of the light is framing the dark, right? That was just an idea that I was experimenting with. Okay. I could have zoomed in even more than that, right? It can get really, really abstract if you zoom in. So let's try one more 3-minute sketch. And one thing is, you can always change where your frame is, right? If I was drawing this and I thought, oh, actually I want to cut it here, I can just draw a line and change where my frame is, right? And change the framing or the like the viewer composition of my little sketch. So let's try one more time. Another idea. This time, anything you want, zoomed out, zoomed in, and let's see what happens. Okay. Okay. I'm just waiting for it to make a second. Whoa. Okay. Okay, let's do 3 more minutes. And go. Okay, about 30 more seconds. Okay. And stop. Okay. So now we should have 3 ideas, right? Different, maybe some of them are similar, right? Maybe some of them have light and shadow, or maybe they're just lines. Here are my 3 different ideas that I experimented with. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at these. And one thing that helps is if you hold it back from you, right? Like hold it at a distance so you can kind of get a little bit more of an objective eye to look and see which one of these is more interesting, right? Maybe it can be something about a contrast of light and shadow, or maybe it could be something that really shows depth or space, or maybe it can even be something as simple as the shapes look interesting together, right? It doesn't have to be very profound or complex or developed at all, but sometimes there's one sketch that can sort of stick out to you in your mind. Does anybody want to share? I mean, even just doing this exercise, was it helpful? Did you learn something? Do you have questions? Are you feeling unsure? Before we move on to doing a little bit longer sketch from our ideas.
Kelly, this is Marcia. I had a hard time getting anything in there, I guess. So I would say I don't have enough on any of them to feel like I would choose any one of them actually. So maybe I didn't, I did like a slightly zoomed out, then or slightly zoomed in, then a slightly zoomed out. Then I tried to just focus on like the interesting frame around the rooftop. But I didn't get very far. I think I delved into the details of it too soon, so just got very little of it done. That was
right. So yeah, so that's a good point. Is the idea is to maybe as much as possible look at the overall sort of play of big shapes, right? So some of the buildings are, there's like a triangle, there's an arch, there are rectangles, circles, half circles, right? They're sort of like putting shapes together in a way, and the details maybe are something that would come at the end. So that's good to notice. Like maybe you can pick one that seems like an interesting idea and spend a little bit longer on it. But maybe first think about the big shapes, and then the details can kind of go in at the end. Okay. Does anybody else?
Yeah, Kelly, Karen here. Here, I'll show you mine. I think I have to be able to see myself, so I can. Okay, so those are the sketches. So
oh, beautiful, yeah.
Well, beautiful. I wouldn't say that, but
no,
thank you anyway. What I found was it's hard in that 3-minute time to do the things that we've talked about before, like measuring, and so some of my proportions are off. And, but doing the shading and the shadowing, that really helped me with this particular exercise.
Okay, so why did that help? That's great.
Just to see it, like you were talking about the bigger shapes of the shadowing and the darker, the different shades of shadowing. So you have the darker ones and the little bit lighter, the different tones. So that was helpful in doing this.
Great. So it kind of can give you a sense of the light, the idea of the light, and sort of when you put it together, what it will look like. Okay, cool. That's great. Yeah, so 3 minutes is not much time to develop anything except a sort of, rough idea. It's like a little brainstorm. Does anybody else want to share or ask a question or anything? Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to work from the same image again. And I would say, even if you feel like you don't know, you didn't develop one idea more than the other, just pick one of your 3 sketches, and we're going to develop it a little bit more. We'll spend 10 minutes, which I know is not very long, right? But you can always spend longer on your own later. But we're going to spend 10 minutes developing your idea into, I think you can make a finished sketch in 10 minutes. So here's the way, one way, not the way, but one way you can approach it. So one way is what we talked about. Instead of focusing on details, think about the bigger shapes first. Now, we'll do, I think, a separate lecture specifically lesson on architecture, because architecture is a whole other world on its own. One thing is, look for the biggest possible shape first. right? So if if a building is like this one, it's like a box or a rectangle, and for example, the portico, it has a triangle on top. So first, look for the big shape. Is it square or is it rectangular, right? And sort of get that down first. And then the triangle that goes on top. Then you can look for where is the arch and how big is it? How far is it to the right compared to the left? Is it in the center? Right? And then, for example, I know that the building just to the right, it's like a narrow, tall rectangle. And think about where does it line up? Next to the arch of the building next to it. So first look for the big shapes, right? And if your proportions aren't exactly right, that's okay. It's a drawing, it's not a photograph. No, we're not going to compare it with the actual place or photograph, right? It's for you to have in the end. And the real exercise of this is to kind of put something together in a short period of time. Right, so first look for the big shapes, then decide what's important. What do I want to really look at, or what am I drawn to look at here? So maybe it could be the play of light and shadow through the arch. So focus on that, and you can use the side of your pencil, right? You can use a soft pencil, like a 2B, 4B, 6B, and lay your pencil flat and really shade it in, right? And create contrast. That can be your focal point. Or maybe it's about lines and texture. So if that's the case, you can use your pencil and think about the different kinds of lines. You can use broken lines, or maybe you have a lot of texture, or in the place where you want the viewer to focus. So what I'd say is, you spend 10 minutes, pick one of your 3 sketches that you think is a more interesting idea, and you can make the frame first on your paper. Maybe use half a sheet of paper, a smaller drawing, especially if you have a lot of shading. And think about big shapes first, and then fill in from there. So is it about light and shadow? Is it about texture? So think about, how am I going to vary my marks, right? If you're using line, make different kinds of marks. Or where is your mark dark and where is it light? You don't have to fill in all the information. Okay. So any questions before we start? Okay. So let's try it for 10 minutes. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to set the timer. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Okay. Okay, let's start and see what happens. And we have about 4.5 minutes left. Just a little time checking. Okay, we've got 1 more minute. So look and see. Now, does it need any details? Right? This would be the time we thought details would help bring it together. In the last minute. Okay, and our time is up. Okay, so I'm actually very curious. If anybody would like to share, what happened? What did you learn from doing this? Um, what happened? So sometimes, like I decided, I'll show you what I did. So I decided to take this idea of the light and dark through the arch, and I developed it into a little bit larger sketch. And so at the very end, I added some detail in the foreground of the arch so that it created a sense. I thought that little touch at the end, it needed it in order to make a sense of, foreground and then in through the arch into the background. So would anybody like to share and just, what happened, successes, what you learned, insights, questions, anything else?
Kelly.
Hi, Diane.
Oh, I thought I turned the video on, but apparently I didn't.
No, let me, sorry, I'm trying to, you did. Okay. Yeah, we can see you. I can see you.
Okay. I don't know what you can see because I can't see it, but anyway.
Yeah.
If you can see my hand, it's the one down at the bottom.
Yes. So it has really great sense of light and shadow.
And that's what I've been trying to learn from when we went out together and subsequent to that. So
yeah, great. So what do you think about your drawing?
Well, I mean, it's certainly not great art, but it is very interesting to look at the light and the shadow.
Yeah, and the really high contrast makes it interesting, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And this, again, I don't know what you're seeing. If you can see my finger.
Yes.
Here. This one I thought was the most interesting of the first three.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I can see this sort of diagonal light and shadow there.
Okay, thank you.
Very nice. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's a great example of not being afraid of dark.
Hi, Kelly. This was my number 2 sketch earlier, in which I sort
great.
of at the shadows really intensely, and I did a charcoal. And I thought that what I would then do was sort of
there you go, right there.
situate this inside of the building, but I tended to lose the shadows because I was fussing too much with the details.
Great. Yeah. So do you see that different? Is there really, maybe there is that difference between the initial sketch and then the longer one?
Yeah. I kind of like the initial one just because of its, it's more stark and very high contrast.
Yeah. So even maybe, I mean, charcoal is beautiful I think it's a great idea to use it for making light and shadow. Yeah, so even maybe just going over the shadow one more time to deepen it. I know that sometimes with charcoal, it can sort of, you breathe on it and it sort of floats away. But that's a really nice idea. I also like you zoomed in. That's very cool. Okay, does anyone else want to share or have something to say?
I will.
I have something to.
Sorry.
Okay.
I don't know if you can you say
Yeah,
it?
Mary, will you go first and then Pierre? Okay.
Sure. So I guess what I loved is the fact you could move the boundaries as your drawing got out of proportion. That was really helpful. And then I was just starting to come back in and do some of the details so that it had made some sense.
Yeah, this is really nice. I love this composition where you cut the arch. So it's like there are these two sort of half moon shapes, the one in the foreground and then the one sort of back further. Yeah, tell me more about, what do you think about your drawing? Is it successful? What do you like about it?
Well, I think the learning drawing with the side of the pencil the last time or a couple times ago was really helpful. Yeah, I think, it definitely, it's about proportion that I think becomes the difficult part, is going back and making sure everything is in proportion to one another.
Yeah, right. And sometimes like something like zooming in can, distort that and eliminate it, or sometimes, make it more interesting. But yes, proportions are a big thing in drawing buildings. But this is beautiful. I think the shadow shapes make it really interesting. Like there's the triangle on top, and then there is this triangular shadow sort of mimicking it at the bottom. So,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks for sharing. Pierre, did you?
Yeah. This was this is really hard for me because the time limit, three
Yeah.
3 minutes, I can hardly decide what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
So-
maybe that's good for for you. Yeah, can you pull it back a little bit? 'Cause now it's really close. More?
So that was the first one.
Okay, I see. Uh-huh. Yeah,
First one.
looking into the top of the arch.
Looking in, and then I like that. Then I'm like, okay, let me step back, and I couldn't figure out proportions, and I got frustrated. Then I said, okay, let me, you know, I started. This is the third attempt, and then so I chose the third one,
Okay,
and I
great.
started doing this, but I got a
Wow.
little crazy with the
No,
color it
that's-
would.
That's
But my
great.
main goal, honestly, is this here.
Mm.
If I could do a close-up of this, that's what I would really want. But I also like this pattern.
I think that's
Anyway.
a really nice drawing here.
That's
It
what I
has this. Well, you see how the top left of the through the arch, it's like that's left in light. It's a shape that's also like mimicking the shape that's in shadow below it. It has this really interesting play of shapes and like balance of light and dark. It's actually a really cool sketch, I think. Cool, thanks for sharing. Does anyone else want to share? Ask.
I'll do
Oh.
it.
Okay, great. Oh, Jan says she has to go. Bye, Jan. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Hi, Connie.
Hi. All right, so these are the first sketches. And I was
Ooh.
trying to do the 3 values, and it's frustrating to me because I have to make so many decisions, you know.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I picked the first one, and I don't know that I really like how it came out because
Wow.
I felt like
Mhm.
there wasn't enough time. Because
Yeah.
I work slow. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe there's just they're competing things, right? Like you could maybe even simplify this more. Like wait, compare this with the first initial 3-minute sketch. How are they different? Are they similar? Yeah.
There's the one I chose.
Yeah. And then you added it's like windows, these dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it just becomes too busy.
Yeah. Maybe so. I don't know. I just need more practice, I think.
Yeah, but the good thing about these quick sketches, they have something that's very spontaneous about them. That gets hard to reproduce the longer you spend on something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that's really nice. But I think the composition is actually really interesting with this diagonal shadow shape in the back looking through the verticals. Actually,
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
Thank you.
Okay. No, thanks for sharing. That's really cool. Okay. Margaret, did you want to share?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let me put you on that screen. Okay. Let's see.
Combo pens were a bad decision.
Why? I don't think so. Can you hold it just a little bit higher?
Pardon?
Sorry, could you hold it just a little bit higher? Great, perfect. Ooh, okay.
So I was trying to indicate solids with the shadows with the Tombow pen.
Yeah. So I think the Tombow pen is you have to really just cover the whole thing.
And then it would have been all black.
Yeah. Do you have any gray Tombow markers?
That was the gray that I was using.
Well, I would say, it's paper and you have more. Maybe try one where it really is just kind of like all this big black shape and see what happens. But the part where you see the windows and the door, how you indicated sort of the cast shadow where it's set in, though, they have this L shape. Those are beautiful, right? That high contrast really gives a nice sense of depth and strong light.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, when you use those markers, you have to be very bold.
I'll get out my soft pencils.
Okay, these are great. Yeah. What did you think of doing this exercise?
Oh, I thought it was good.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing, Margaret.
Are you going to leave us with the photo?
Yeah, I can send a file, I think, here in the chat box, and I'll do that now, and I will also put it on the Facebook group, and I can also send it in the email on Monday. So I can put it in a few different places. Okay, and I'll send it
Thank you.
now before we hang up. Cool. Thank you, Margaret.
Uh-huh.
So, does anyone else want to share, comment?
Yes.
Questions?
Yeah.
Great.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
I don't know where. There I am. Okay.
Yeah. Can you turn on your video?
Oh, I thought I did. I didn't. I see. That's why.
Oh, there we go.
So, yeah. So
Beautiful.
I was happier with this one because I kind of decided what I want to do. And even then, I think I took on too much for what I was trying to do. But I was happy with it. And I started noticing, like I didn't notice at first, oh, there are steps there. That's even more interesting than the arch. So it was interesting to kind of get into it and see what else was there. At first, I just saw the arch. Then I started, oh, there's actually a bend to the wall there, which I didn't see before. How do I do that? That kind of thing. And I hadn't tried to do character for the stone.
Yeah.
So I tried to do that with the side of my pencil and was, I like it, I guess. Yeah, I guess I like so.
Yeah.
And it's much more satisfying than my first two. Again, I kind of like started high and then started in details and ran out of time, which was not satisfying. And I tried to zoom in a little and I still tried on too much. And I tried details and even that I just started off trying to do specific shading of bricks and ran out of time again. So the big shape thing helped me in particular.
Yeah, I think the one that you chose was really the most successful.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Also, like it has a nice balance of light and like there's some light in the big dark shapes, and then there is some dark in the big light shapes, and it doesn't get distracted by detail. I think that was a beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, does anyone else want to share or ask questions or make comments? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. And